prisoner of war is a person who's been captured and imprisoned by the enemy in war. Upon the unfortunate event of being captured, each POW had their own unique experience with the enemy. This is Lieutenant Colonel Harold Brown's experience. He's one of the legendary Tuskegee Airmen. At the age of 19, Harold Haywood Brown graduated from the U.S. military's segregated pilot training program at Tuskegee Army Airfield and was commissioned as an officer in the U.S. Army Air Corps in 1944. During his time in combat, he completed missions of strafing targets on the ground and protecting bombers in the air. On March 14, 1945, the Tuskegee Airmen flew 4 missions. One was strafing targets on a railroad line. Another was escorting B-24s from the 47th Bombardment Group. The other 2 were escorting P-38 Lightnings on photo reconnaissance missions. My dad, Mryon Mike Wilson, was on the reconnaissance mission. Harold Brown flew the strafing mission. This would be his 30th mission. Strafing is a military practice of attacking ground targets from low-flying aircraft using aircraft-mounted automatic weaponry, and is known to be one of the most dangerous assignments a fighter pilot can face. Today's mission will ratify this premise, and would also prove to be Brown's last mission of World War II. At 11:15 hours east of Bruck, Austria, the locomotive Brown was strafing violently exploded, hurling shrapnel into the engine of his P-51. With only seconds before losing power, he quickly bailed out of his badly damaged Mustang and parachuted to an unfamiliar disquietude beneath him. Angry villagers watched him float down in his parachute. Brown landed not far from his target, only to be apprehended by 2 local armed constables. A mob of more than 24 began to surround him, and they were furious, for he had just fiercely attacked their town. I was met by perhaps 35 of the most angry people I've ever met in my life, said Brown. He went on to say, no doubt there's murder on their minds. It was clear that they finally decided to hang me. They took me to a perfect hanging tree with a nice low branch, and they had a rope. I knew at that moment I was going to die. I could see no way out, but miraculously, Brown was rescued by a 3rd constable. Lo and behold, there was one good person in the crowd, Brown said. The 3rd constable stepped up from the back and threatened to fire on the crowd to protect Brown, who was his prisoner of war. The 2 men made their way to a nearby pub. They threw everybody out and barricaded themselves there, and at about midnight they left the pub. The constable and Brown courageously made their way to a nearby village, where Brown was turned over to German soldiers. Now it was up to these soldiers to get Brown to the nearest POW camp. They made their way to a train, which was going to take them to the relative safety of a nearby POW camp. On the way, they noticed a squadron of P-51s approaching their train. Brown thought, oh great, our boys. The Allies are here. Ironically, those P-51s were on a strafing mission and began strafing the train Brown was on board. Brown thought back to all the times he was strafing and had watched trains as they unsuccessfully scurried to make it to the safety of a nearby bridge, which would protect them from air attacks. He heard the familiar howling of the P-51 Mustangs and the terrifying roar of their 6 50 cal machine guns as they tore apart sections of the train he was on. Now he was on the other side of the gunfire, but on this day, that train fortuitously made it to the safety of a tunnel, which saved it from certain and total destruction. Brown eventually made it to the unpropitious safety of a nearby POW camp. Brown was held at that camp until the end of the war, when it was liberated by Allies. On this day, dying wasn't in the cards for this warrior.